Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of High Energy Girl. And today's awesome guest is Dr. Ryan Lowery, who is the co-author of the amazing textbook. Now, Dr. Lowery is a PhD, a 2014 national champion baseball player who earned his BS and MS in exercise physiology and exercise and nutrition science for the University of Tampa. Ryan completed his doctorate work at Concordia University in health and human performance with a focus on the effects of a well-formulated ketogenic diet and exogenous ketone supplementation on various markers of health and body composition in healthy and diagnosed populations. Ryan currently serves as the CEO of Ketogenic.com, president of the Applied Science and Performance Institute, and has invested in several health-focused startups. Over his career, Ryan has published over 150 papers, abstracts, and book chapters on human performance and sports nutrition, and is heavily focused on the impact of ketogenic diets and exogenous ketones on performance, cognitive function, and longevity. Let's go and say hello to Dr. Lowery. Hey everyone, welcome to High Energy Girl, a podcast helping women to age stronger because it is never too late to get fit, be strong, and feel sexy. I'm your host, Tracy Gluhite, health coach and personal trainer and founder of highenergygirl.com. Each week, we will either have a guest interview, which will provide you encouragement or an actionable tip to help you age stronger, or I will do a solo episode. Please also join our awesome Facebook group called High Energy Girls, and I'm looking forward to see you on the inside of that group and hope you enjoy today's show. Hey everyone, this is Tracy, and I have a special announcement. In order for me to help more women age stronger, I have created a 90-day one-on-one coaching program. And the goal here is to teach women over 50 how to age stronger while burning fat and boosting energy without going hungry or living in the gym. If you'd like more information, please hit me up at tracy@highenergygirl.com or friend me on Facebook and send me a message. I have a goal of transforming 1,000 women in the next year, and I hope you are one of them. Hey, Dr. Lowery, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited.
Oh, cool. Well, I'm going to give you a little clarification, transparency. I had the Ketogenic Bible on my desk for a long time because I was intimidated. And finally I said, okay, I'm just going to sit down and dive in, and wow, best book ever. So thank you so much.
Thank you. It took a long time to put that together. So it's intimidating because it's big, but there's a lot of good information in there.
Well, it's like a textbook with all those references. I always tell people that.
It is. It's a lot of research, but we tried to take it and really break it down for people to be able to understand.
Yeah, it's awesome. I think it's really great because it gives people hope, at least, for people like me. So how long ago did that come out? I don't even remember.
I think it's over 3 years now. I think we're going on 3.5 years. So we probably wrote it about 4 years ago.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize it has actually been that long. So tell the audience a little bit about who you are, just in case somebody out there listening doesn't know.
Yeah, so just a little bit about me. I grew up playing sports my entire life, was super interested I thought I was going to become the next Derek Jeter, which is crazy. But I played baseball all the way up through college. But when I was in high school, middle school, or in early high school, my grandmother passed away unexpectedly at the age of 62. And she had type 2 diabetes, was obese, and just died from a heart attack, really kind of just out of nowhere. And that kind of sunk on me for a little bit, and that kind of affected our entire family because we're a big Italian family, right? Grandma is the heart of the entire family. And so that took a big toll on us, and that's kind of what jump-started my drive or ambition to get into the health field, because I was like, you know what, as much as and as important as it is to be exercise and move, nutrition's super important. So I kind of became obsessed with studying nutrition, not just even low carb nutrition, just nutrition overall in the beginning, and then went to University of Tampa, did my master's there with Dr. Jacob Wilson. And then after I ended up playing baseball while I was at UT. We won a national championship, what was really cool. And then kind of just said, you know what? I'm going to continue going on, finish my PhD. But during that time, we created what we have now, which is the Applied Science and Performance Institute, which is a 22,000 square foot facility where we literally just study and do research and science and try and bridge the gap between this hardcore science that's out there and practical application, try and like break it down for people to understand.
Oh, very cool. That is awesome. And how long have you guys had that?
About 4.5 years now. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And what do you guys like? What's something cool that's new that people may not have know about yet?
Well, we do a lot of research on keto. We're doing a lot in both a ketogenic diet and exogenous ketones, but also just a variety of different stuff. We're doing some stuff right now with stem cells, looking at how stem cells can help with things like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. So just fascinating areas kind of all over the map.
Stem cells are amazing. I used to be in the dental space and they were talking about how you can extract them from like wisdom teeth out of children and then store them for later use. Have you heard anything about that?
I've heard of it. We haven't worked with anyone that does that type. We're doing more umbilical cord, placenta, where they like kind of take it from the umbilical, freeze it early on, stuff like that, or bone derived, where they'll literally take it out of the bone and do it. But yeah, it's fascinating area.
Yeah. Oh gosh, it's so cool. One of our family members had stem cells in their shoulder and it was painful after a day or so, but then after that, like they were pain free after suffering for probably 10 years.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah, that's cool. So when I was reading your book, so I've been keto for about 4.5 years. And when I finally decided to dive into the textbook, there was so many references to exogenous ketones. Now, I thought, well, if my body's making ketones, which I'm always in ketosis, why would I need exogenous ketones? So,
great question.
Can you help me understand like the difference between, what is it, endogenous?
Yeah.
Endogenous and exogenous, like why I need both?
Yeah, great question. And the way I talk about exogenous ketones is they're a tool, right? They're not meant to completely replace a ketogenic or low carb lifestyle. Like exogenous ketones, despite like I have a bunch of YouTube videos that are out there because right now people are getting bombarded with these scams of like these Shark Tank pills. People have seen them all over the place, but they're claiming to be this company that was on Shark Tank that got an investment. And I literally get letters sent to our office every day from, it's mostly elderly people who don't even, I think, have social media, but they see these ads, they buy these pills, and they're getting charged like $100 a month. And it's just a huge, huge, huge scam. But like a lot of times people see that and get a negative thought process about exogenous ketones because companies like that will say, hey, it doesn't matter what you eat. Go eat a Big Mac and just take our pills and you're going to lose 100 pounds in 3 weeks. And it's like, well, one, no one should ever lose 100 pounds in 3 weeks. But two, that's not how exogenous ketones work. And so that's why we dedicated an entire chapter to that, because endogenous ketones are what our body produces when we're fasting, when we're on a ketogenic diet, when we eat anything with like high amounts of fat or that's low carb, basically meaning endogenous means within. So our body's basically making them within from breaking down fat. Exogenous means from out external. So exogenous ketones, there's two different types, ketone salts and ketone esters. We're doing a lot of research on ketone salts, but there's a lot of research on ketone esters as well. The thing is, they are a tool, right? I take them for like a cognitive boost. I've been on a ketogenic diet for nearly 10 years, and like I still will incorporate them into my day to get like a cognitive boost to just like prolong my fast, or like versus eating a meal, I might just take some exogenous ketones to like go on another 3 meetings before I have to have dinner or something like that.
Yeah, that's cool. I like that part of it. And plus, if you get the right ones, they taste really good, and then they break the monotony of just drinking water all day.
Exactly.
Pellegrino serves the purpose too.
Love it. Love it.
In glass only, of course. But how would that make your life better? Like, I'm doing a lot of research in aging, and my dad had cancer like 5 times. My mom has Alzheimer's. It's awful, awful to watch. So how is drinking them versus producing them going to improve your health, weight loss, things like that?
Yeah, really great question. Honestly, a lot of the areas that we're focusing on are neurological conditions, like you touched on: Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, traumatic brain injury. And in essence, what you see in these individuals is very similar to what you see in type 2 diabetics, right? Type 2 diabetics aren't able to properly utilize and take up glucose or carbohydrates as their main source of fuel anymore. Their body and their cells are becoming more and more resistant to that fuel. So that's why they need to dump in more and more insulin to try and get it in there. The same thing is happening with our brain. Our brain's becoming more and more insulin resistant as we get older. And so it's just about getting an alternative source of fuel in there, right? You can do it through many means: a ketogenic diet, intermittent fasting, MCT oil supplementation. Exogenous ketone supplementation gives you the greatest spike and the quickest delivery to be able to do that. And these are all areas, like if someone's unwilling to go on a ketogenic diet, like a good friend of ours, Dr. Mary Newport, her husband, she was one of the first people who was using coconut oil and a ketone ester, because like her husband had Alzheimer's and refused to like sway from his normal routine of eating sandwich and chips for lunch. Like, he didn't want to do it. So instead of trying to convince him to do that, she said, how can I at least get him this fuel to his brain? And she utilized things like MCT oil, coconut oil, and then eventually exogenous ketones.
Yeah, that is incredible. I ordered my mom some, and she's in a senior living center, so she's like on total lockdown. I haven't seen her in, I can't remember how long. So I ordered her some and a shaker bottle. So fingers crossed, I'm hoping it makes a difference. So
yeah, you'll definitely have to let me know. Definitely.
Yeah, I really, really hope, because she's going down a black hole. And when she first was diagnosed, that's how I actually found the ketogenic diet, because I was looking for nutritional protocols, because I've been studying nutrition since 2007. And I thought there's got to be a way to look at this from a nutritional perspective. And that's how I found keto. And as a long distance runner, I was like, oh, no way. Like, that's Atkins and all that, you know? Yeah. But then I was like, yeah, Mom, you got to try this. And so I'd take her shopping. But then she cared more about her bread and her sweet rolls than she, wanted to change her life. So
right.
What are you going to do? So what about from a weight loss perspective? So as a health coach, I work with mostly women over 50, and they are all focused on losing weight. So how does it actually work? Like, why would you drink ketones instead of just burning your fat for fuel?
Great question. One, I tell people this all the time, is I try and get people, and hopefully everyone that's listening to this, to reframe that you don't just want to lose weight. You want to lose fat and maintain or gain muscle, right? Weight is just a measurement that people often look at, but like, I could have someone lose 10 pounds very quickly, but that doesn't mean it's going to be a good amount, a good 10 pounds. Like, there's a lot of things that are involved with weight. They want to lose fat. And one of the reasons and one of the ways that exogenous ketones work, and a ketogenic diet, right? If anyone's ever gone on a ketogenic diet, you realize that like, you're not eating as frequently. The people talk about, oh, these people are hardcore intermittent fasters. Well, it's kind of by nature. Like, you're just not hungry when you wake up, and maybe you just have some coffee, and then you're like eating a late lunch and maybe a light dinner, and you're like, cool. I'm like, whereas before you were on this carb train that was like, oh my gosh, I got to eat every 2 hours because I'm like spiking, and then I'm going down, and I'm hypoglycemic, and I just need food. Well, now, and I say this in times like we're in quarantine, like people are cooped up in their houses, snacks are available. people's appetite and they're snacking more than ever before, right? So you're like, one of the things that ketosis in general, being in a state of ketosis does is help suppress appetite. So you're less likely to snack. You're less likely to go to the cabinet and eat those snacks because ketones and ketosis works on a hormone called ghrelin, which is like your hunger hormone, and it affects that to prevent you, in essence, from being hungry all the time.
So it suppresses ghrelin?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Has effects on both ghrelin and leptin.
Okay. Yeah, I heard a great quote. Somebody said to me the other day, if you eat when you're not hungry, how do you know when you're satisfied? That's a good one, right?
That's a good one.
Because I saw somebody posted a sign on Facebook that was like taped in the refrigerator. It said, "You are not hungry. You are bored. Shut the damn door."
That's true. One of the things I say all the time is that I think ketosis helps put appetite back in your control. I think so many times people are the other way around, where their appetite is controlling them, and like they're eating even when they're not hungry, but like their appetite's like going at them saying like, well, it's time. You're used to eating at this time. You need to go eat. Whereas ketosis kind of takes that and gives you back the power to go like, no, I'm not hungry. This is just behavior. Like I can wait till dinner to eat.
That is a really good point. It's more of an introspection, I guess.
Right.
You know, it helps you be more mindful and intuitive rather than having external forces be talking at you and controlling you.
Exactly right.
Ooh, I like that. Okay, I'm going to have to steal that. And then what about like for aging? So like if we want to inspire people to do a 180, age healthier, what besides like of all of this stuff that you study, what advice would you give somebody?
A couple things. One, like when we talk about aging, one of the biggest things that people experience as they get older is something called sarcopenia, which is age-related muscle loss. So you tend to lose muscle very, very rapidly as you tend to get older. So that's going to be very important to hold on to. Two is optimize what's up here, right? Optimize your cognitive function to the best of your ability. It might not be like what you were like when you were 20, but get it to where it's in your prime or as optimal as you can be. And then three is like control the controllable, right? Control things like you can control to the best of your ability your inflammatory response, meaning don't eat things that are super highly inflammatory all the time. That will age you faster. That will create things like reactive oxygen species and will age you faster. So if I had to give some quick tips, it would be basically like mitigate stress and lower stress as often as possible. Eat intuitively and eat, I obviously would say low carb and adequate protein. As you get older, your protein needs actually go up. When you're young, you can get away with eating 15 or 20 grams of protein per meal. As you get older, those needs go up. So you need to actually eat more than what a kid would eat in terms of protein. And then just exercise, move, right? Try and incorporate in some type of movement. It doesn't need to be squats every single day and deadlifts, but like just get up off the couch and move, go for a walk, try and do some form of resistance training to try and hold on to that muscle tissue.
Okay, so with that said, the sarcopenia, when people age, they have that muscle wasting, essentially. How does the ketogenic diet mitigate some of that?
So one of the things that a ketogenic diet does is, we've seen this in research, is helps preserve muscle mass and prevent it from being lost. So the way I like to explain it is protein or muscle growth is on a seesaw. On one end, there's this equation known as protein breakdown, right? You want to try and prevent protein from being broken down. And on the other end is protein synthesis. You want to try and synthesize as much protein and prevent as much protein from being broken down. Keto works on both facets. So one of the things we know is that in animal studies, we've shown this over and over again, that ketogenic diet and actually exogenous ketones help specific amino acids that are important for muscle growth from being broken down. So it like helps preserve the muscle, which is great. On the same token, it helps increase a process known as muscle protein synthesis, which is like a light switch. When the light switch is on, protein building is on. When the light switch is off, it's kind of off. It kind of helps turn on the light switch. So it's working on both ends of the spectrum.
Oh, cool. And then what about, so you said we need to eat more protein as we age. So I'm 54. How much protein, how do you calculate how much protein you recommend?
Yeah, it's tough because it varies. Like you're super active, so it'd probably be a little bit more on the higher end. But I tell people start and then kind of be your own guinea pig to adjust. Where I would start at minimum, absolute minimum for people who are over the age, I'd say of 35, is 1.2 grams per kilogram.
Okay.
So if you calculate kilogram, you just take your weight divided by 2.2, but 1.2 grams per kilogram. So it depends on what you weigh and where you're at, but that would kind of calculate, hey, on a daily basis, this is roughly where I should be at.
So, okay. So is that for if you're athletic? So you take your weight divided by 2.2 and then you times it by 1.2?
Yep, exactly.
So I should have like 75 grams. Now, does that matter if I'm active or not?
I think that's like bare minimum.
Okay.
If you're active, like I would push that higher.
Okay.
I think just for like standard health, as you get older, 1.2 grams per kilogram. People who are younger could probably get away with 1 gram per kilogram. Like if I'm 80 kilograms, I could probably get away with 80, but the key as well, and I want to preface this because it's not just like eating 80 grams of protein in one meal. If you're having 2 meals a day, like split that up, like have 40 in one meal, like 40 in another meal. Or if you're having 3 meals a day, like cool, maybe have 30, 30, 30 and get in 9, like something like that. Make sure you're optimizing it on a per meal basis.
So does too much protein at one time increase your, is it insulin or glucose? And can your body actually use all of it? Like I've heard that, you could only utilize a certain amount of protein per meal.
Really good questions. It depends on the protein causing an insulin or glucose spike. Now, if you go to a steakhouse and you go and have a steak with butter and Brussels sprouts on the side or something, and it's like a big steak, and say it's the equivalent of 60 grams of protein, you have other constituents in there, fiber, fat. Like it's going to take longer to digest that meat. Like that will not increase your insulin. Now, if you go and you have a shaker bottle and you stick 2 scoops of protein powder in, that's just straight whey protein, and that's 40 to 50 grams of whey protein, and you drink that down really quickly, you might get a little bit of an insulin spike because it's just so rapidly absorbed. It's not really with anything else. It's just kind of pure protein. So that's why it kind of depends. In a mixed meal situation, you really don't have to worry about that unless you're hitting up like a Brazilian steakhouse or something like that.
Oh, thanks for reminding me. We got a gift card. One of my clients got me a gift card for my husband and I to go to a Brazilian steakhouse, and we haven't gone yet. So does the butter lower like the glycemic load of that? Does it somehow?
Yeah, because it also helps slow the digestion of like how quickly that protein is going to be broken down. Right. Whereas like when you're drinking a protein shake with nothing else in it, just straight protein, it's kind of just like it's in and it's getting broken down very rapidly. So you might get a little bit of a spike. Whereas a mixed meal, you're not going to see that happen.
Okay, cool. So do you recommend doing like how many meals a day do you typically do? 2, 1?
So I actually do something called calorie cycling. So where I kind of like during the week, it's kind of the same. And then on the weekends, I shift my calories. But in essence, like during the week, like I haven't eaten yet today. So I usually do what I call a Metabolic Monday. So I usually go from Sunday night to Monday night and I do a 24-hour fast. It's just super easy for me to get through the workday that way. And then I eat dinner on Monday night. But during the week, I typically have 2 meals a day. And then on the weekends, I'll tend to have three. Still keto, still low carb, but I'm also more active on the weekends. Like I go to the gym during the week, but like on the weekend I might go to the gym, but then like take my dog to the park or like go on a hike or like do something like that. So I'm more active.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I actually want to experiment with that a little bit. I'm not a good counter. Like I just kind of really eat when I need to eat and don't track anything, but I need to start playing with things like that. So
yeah, for sure.
So I sent out like an email to some of my people just to see what types of questions that they would have for you. Is it okay if we go through that?
Absolutely.
So Sandra asks, how many carbohydrates should you have in a day to maintain a ketogenic state? And how do you stay healthy on a ketogenic diet so you don't raise your cholesterol level? And is there too much fat that you can take in?
So two questions there. The first one is how many carbohydrates can you consume to stay in ketosis? It depends on your metabolic state. Some people who are more active can tolerate more carbohydrates. Some people who are less active can tolerate a little bit less carbohydrates. So it really depends. Most people sweet spot is anywhere around 25 to 50 net carbohydrates. So when I say net, I mean like actual net, not like some of these protein bars that are out there that like claim 2 net carbs, but they're actually like 30 grams of carbs. I'm saying when you're calculating net carbohydrates, for people that don't know, you basically take your total amount of carbohydrates and you subtract out the fiber. If you're doing it, like that's okay to do with things like whole foods, right? Broccoli or cauliflower, that like, yes, you can subtract out the fiber because it's not going to have any metabolic impact. So most people's sweet spot is 25 to 50 net carbohydrates. Some people that are more active or people who have more muscle tend to be able to get away with a little bit more. Second part to that was on cholesterol. One of the most controversial questions with keto. The thing to understand is that most cholesterol profiles, when you go to your doctor and you get just a basic checkup on your cholesterol, tells you very little, right? LDL and total cholesterol tells you very little about what you actually want to know. And in fact, it's kind of crazy. Right now, there's actually just a study that was published about a month ago that showed that people with low LDL, which is what most doctors would be like, oh, that's great, you want a low LDL. People with low LDL are having a greater severity with COVID-19, meaning like they're more symptomatic and having worse outcomes if they have lower cholesterol, LDL cholesterol, than the people who have higher cholesterol, which is crazy, kind of backwards for what most doctors would think. What really matters is a lot of the other things that you should be looking at it, right? Your triglycerides, your fasting triglycerides, what are those at? Something known as VLDL, very low density lipoproteins, which you need kind of like a special cholesterol profile in order to get some insight into that. And then the other one I like to look at, the other two actually, that I always recommend looking at them all together to make an assumption, is hemoglobin A1C, which is a marker of insulin sensitivity over the course of the last couple of months, and an inflammatory marker, something like CRP. Mm-hmm. Are you highly inflamed, right? Because you could have really low LDL or low cholesterol, but your triglycerides are really high, your A1C is really high, and your inflammatory is really high. That's not a good marker of health, but like your doctor would look at that, and if they didn't check those other things, you'd be like, oh, you're great, when in reality, you're not.
Mm-hmm. And what about particle size?
It matters significantly. That's like the VLDL, very low density lipo, like particle size. Typically, what I recommend people get is an NMR lipoprofile test. It's basically tells you particle size, VLDL. It tells you triglycerides. It's a deeper look underneath the hood of just like this umbrella of total cholesterol.
Yeah. And what I tell my clients is that a truer indicator of heart health is going to come from a calcium score, not a cholesterol number. Would you agree?
Sure. 100%. And a colleague of mine, Dr. David Diamond, he's done a bunch of TED Talks on this that are out on YouTube, but really, really brilliant guy. But he talks a lot about cholesterol, and he talks about the cholesterol myth. And if you look at it, like, one, people who tend to have higher cholesterol actually tend to live longer, believe it or not, which is crazy. But two is that if cholesterol was so bad, these things like Lipitor and like these cholesterol drugs that you're looking at would have a much greater effect on than what is actually out there. And he literally breaks down the Lipitor study showing that the difference between heart attacks of people who didn't take Lipitor and had high cholesterol versus people who had high cholesterol and took Lipitor is 1%. Literally 1%. And there's like a laundry list of side effects, including low testosterone, destroyed hormones, all these other aspects that come with taking cholesterol lowering medication for a 1% difference, which in the grand scheme, like, probably doesn't even mean anything.
Well, that is one of my hot buttons is if all those statin drugs worked, why is heart attack or heart disease the number one killer of men and women in our country with millions and millions and millions of people taking those drugs? Clearly, it's not working. So, and then
and the studies don't show that. The studies show that too. They don't show that these things are having profound effects. They're showing that they're having very, very, very minimal effects with a laundry list of side effects.
Yeah, and it's just all the money. And then she also asked, is there too much fat that you can take in?
Certainly. And I think that's something that people sometimes take out of proportion when they first start. They start throwing down all these fat bombs and they don't realize it. They're like, this is great. Like I was when I first started out like 10 years ago doing a keto, I was eating like I would take heavy whipping cream and unsweetened cocoa powder and like protein powder and like make this like keto mousse, and I'd eat it like twice a day, but like it was probably 100 grams of fat in each one of those, and I was having like 2 a day. So like it was just overdoing it. And so that's one thing, fat isn't bad, but like keep it in context as well. Kind of, I'd like to say use it as a lever, right? When you're hungry, you can add a little bit more fat in, but it's not like you need to be like, oh, I need to make sure I get in 300 grams of fat a day. It's like, no, it's okay if you don't hit your fat number. You want to make sure you're staying under on carbs, you're definitely hitting your protein, and then kind of use fat as a lever. Like if you're not as hungry, cool, you don't need to force it. If you are hungry, great. Throw a little bit more butter on your steak and like enjoy dinner.
Yeah, that's what I say. I learned that from Luis at Keto Gains. You know?
Yeah, he's brilliant.
Fat is the lever. And also I find that when people get started, they're like, oh, fat bombs, I can eat as much as I want. Oh, and then it's a slippery slope, you know?
It is. Yep.
So, and then somebody asked, is it okay to take exogenous ketones and electrolytes together?
I think so. I think it's fine. The thing to understand is if you're taking exogenous ketone salts, most of them tend to be high in some electrolytes already, right? Because they're bound to electrolytes. They're already high in things like sodium, magnesium, calcium. So if you're taking the electrolyte, if you're taking exogenous ketones, especially the salts, the ones that I would take with the exogenous ketones is some type of like potassium supplement. I think that's like some type of potassium, because you're already getting in probably 500 milligrams to 1,000 milligrams of sodium with the exogenous ketones. You probably don't need to pack on another 1,000 unless you're going for like a long duration run or you're going to have like a hard workout. Otherwise, I don't think it's necessary.
Okay, that's interesting. So there's no potassium, but there's sodium and magnesium in them?
And calcium in most of them, yep.
Okay, so, it's really hard to get good sources of potassium. All I've ever found is like 99 milligrams. So I have my girls drink this electrolyte replacement that I do with a teaspoon of no salt, which is potassium chloride, a teaspoon of like a pink or a gray salt, and then some calm, magnesium calm. And we make like this little Ketolite formula with lemon, and it's pretty good.
Do they like avocados?
Yeah, avocados and spinach is what the other forms of potassium. And then somebody said, how often should one take electrolytes after being fat adapted?
I think it depends on their activity level. But it's good that they're asking that question because they're cognizant that they should be taking in electrolytes. Like it's almost impossible. It's possible, but like it's a lot easier to supplement in your diet with electrolytes. Because it's difficult to get like the amount of salt that you need with food alone. So I salt all my food with like real salt. I'll like dump it all over everything. Anytime I'm consuming something, I probably have about 5 grams of salt a day, which is a lot. Most cardiologists would probably freak out, but I sweat a lot when I work out. So like I make sure I replenish that back in. And I just feel better. I don't like cramping or anything like that. And then sometimes I'll have like some electrolytes and I take exogenous ketones. So yeah, I think it's fine to do, but again, it kind of depends on your activity level.
Yeah, and the heat. If you're sweating,
the heat,
yep. And if you're drinking enough water, I mean, so
very important.
I noticed one day my husband and I mountain bike, and one day it was like 100 degrees out, and he always does this to me on the weekend. Like it's always, oh, we're gonna go at 1, when it's freaking hot. But before I go, I do a salt and lemon shot just so I have that sodium, to prepare me. So otherwise I can get lightheaded in that heat.
Yep. Same. Yep.
So, okay. So Marcia asks, I'd like to know what Dr. Lowery believes to be the single largest success factor for leading a ketogenic lifestyle.
Like, what's the best benefit of a keto lifestyle? Honestly, I think there's a ton, right? Even in the book, I talked about all these different applications. If I could say one in general, it would kind of be under the category of like food freedom, like kind of what I said earlier. Like, I think the sole ability to take appetite and put it back into people's control and kind of go back, you can kind of say primal, right? Because we've kind of lost that primal instinct where it's like feast and famine, right? Like now it's like feast because there's food available on every corner and every cabinet. Like we have food all the time, but you're kind of going back to that state naturally where like, yes, there's still food available, but like I'm able to control and kind of have control of my appetite to be like, I haven't eaten today. Like I'm going to go eat something now because I'm starting to get a little bit hungry and I can do this. Like intermittent fasting is one of the hottest things in the world, but like it becomes a lot easier. It doesn't even become intermittent fasting, like trying to do it. It's just kind of like it happens by nature because I'm not hungry and because I now control my appetite. And it's like, I'll eat at lunch. I'm fine.
Yeah. Sort of I like that. The freedom. It does definitely get you off that blood sugar roller coaster. So that's right. Good. And then is keto okay to do in your 80s and 90s?
I think I don't see a reason why. Why not? I mean, like I don't see why it would be harmful at all. I definitely think that getting in an alternative source of fuel for people who are in their 80s and 90s is critical, right? And getting something that they can provide their brain with that is arguably a superior fuel source for their brain becomes essential. And so if they could do that with diet, that would be amazing.
Okay, cool. And what is the biggest downfall, if any, of doing the keto lifestyle?
What is the biggest downfall? I think for most, it's the adaptation period. I think because everyone wants everything instantaneously, right? So it's a lot of times people are like, I've been doing keto for 3 days and like, I have a headache, this stinks, I can't get over this, blah, 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 blah. And they have all these limiting beliefs about like why it's terrible. But the thing I tell people, I'm like, you've been eating a certain way and have been running on a source of fuel, primarily glucose or exclusively glucose for 30, 40 years. It's going to take more than 48 hours to try and switch over to a new fuel source. So give it some time. And I give them tools on how to overcome that. And then kind of piggybacking off of that, I think it's how like one of people's biggest challenges is their limiting beliefs of what you can eat on a ketogenic diet, right? I have a lot of family people that are just like, I can never do that. Like, I like sweets too much, or I can never do that. Like, I like this too much. And I'm like, oh, cool. Like, that's great. Me too. Like, there's always an alternative. Like, I can always make something that's a low carb option. Like, I love sushi. I'm a huge sushi fan. I eat sashimi like 3 times a month now. Like, I love it. So it's just like, there's always alternatives, or you can make cauliflower rice sushi if you're really getting creative and like want to dive in. There's pasta alternatives. My mom, I've gotten my mom and my dad to eat pasta alternatives that aren't high carb, and they're like, that's crazy. So,
like, what's your favorite with that? Which one do you like?
Palmini is probably the best one I've tried so far.
Oh, I've never tried that. I like the Miracle noodles.
Miracle, they're good if you want. You just have to wash them for like 10 minutes to get that smell out.
I know,
for a
it's
little
so
bit.
nasty.
It's rough, but palmini's made of hearts of palm, so it's kind of like a root, and you just cook it, and it's to me, it's like delicious. It's really good.
How many carbs per serving?
I think it's like one net carb, because it's all just fiber. It's just like, it's literally like a vegetable.
Oh, cool. I'll have to try that. Okay, thank you. That is one thing I'm going to add to the list. So getting back to what you said a minute ago, can you explain the state of ketosis versus keto adapted and why the latter is their long-term goal?
Yeah. So in essence, when you're properly keto adapted, meaning that your body is running on fat and ketones as its primary fuel source, you're kind of in a unique metabolic state. Like, your body's running on a completely different fuel source than what it was running on prior. It's no longer reliant on carbohydrates and glucose. It's no longer like this roller coaster of like, you go hypoglycemic and you need something else. You have a virtually limitless supply of fuel. It's one of the reasons why, if you look at all of the studies in endurance athletes, like a lot of the endurance athlete studies that are being done in keto adapted individuals, like, think about it. Everyone, doesn't matter how lean you are, has a ton of fat that you can tap into if you're keto adapted on your body. If you're not keto adapted, right, you're a carbohydrate based individual and you go on these long runs or you do these long events, you hit the wall. And it's commonly referred to as hitting the wall. You've all seen the videos of like people who are running and then just boom, collapse. Like, that person still has fuel available to them, but they are not able to tap into it because they're not properly adapted. They don't have the right machinery to be able to go in and kind of break down that body fat. Whereas once you're keto adapted, you kind of have that built up.
So how long does it take a person to get keto adapted on average?
Tough. It depends on how aggressively you go for it, right? We've done studies in our lab where you can keto adapt someone in a week and a half, utilizing resistance training, high intensity interval training, intermittent fasting, and like a well-formulated ketogenic diet. For some people, it might take a couple weeks. If they're like kind of dabbling, right? You have some of the people that are like, oh, they're like in day 4, they're like, oh, I don't really know about this. And then they're like eating their like husband's chips or something. And then they're like, it was only a couple of chips. Well, now that's going to kind of set you back a little bit longer. So it might take you a couple more days or maybe even another week to adapt. So it all just depends on your level of commitment, how much you exercise. And the reason why the exercise is important is because you're depleting your glycogen stores, or your body's own form of stored carbohydrates. So once you deplete those, you kind of can build up the machinery to go, all right, now let's tap into fat. But if you're kind of still supplying that occasionally, or you're not depleting it through exercise, it might just take a little bit longer.
Yeah, I always tell them, you're confusing your body. Your body's like, well, what do you want me to do? You know, it's like, I don't know if I made this up, but I just say it's metabolic confusion. Like, your body's like, I'm not sure what you want me to do. So it's not easily going in and out. But for me, we live on an orchard. We have 80 fruit trees. We live out in the country. And like, when we harvest, like plums or apricots or peaches are coming, I'll eat that day. I'll eat as many peaches as I want, but then by the next evening, I'm back in ketosis.
Right. Exactly. And that's one of the things that we see is like the longer you're on a ketogenic diet or living a ketogenic lifestyle, the quicker it is for you to get back into ketosis. Like the other day, it was my birthday last week, and we went out and had like sushi. Like I had like real sushi. I didn't have the sashimi. I had out and had real sushi. But like I was back into ketosis by 12 o'clock the next day. Like it's just my metabolic machinery's up. I had a good workout that day and then a good workout that night. And like it's just way easier for me to get back in now.
Well, happy birthday, by the way. I remember seeing that. I posted a silly GIF. But so with that said, your body's going to burn through that glucose right away and get you back in instead of being all wonky. And then you're getting that dizziness and the headache and the confusion again, right?
Right.
So what is your take on fat to protein ratios? Like I know that some people are, you want your protein moderate and your fat high, but then I'm seeing stuff that, well, it really doesn't matter if your fat's super high because as long as your carbs are low, you're still going to be, making ketones.
Exactly. I think it's variable. And so if we had to go on like a percentage of what I typically recommend for people for fat, I'd say anywhere from 60 to 75% is where most people feel their best. And meaning 60 to 75% of your daily calories coming from fat. The rest coming from a mixture of protein and carbohydrates, with carbohydrates being around 5%, 5 to 10% max. But like you said, I'm more interested in minimizing the glucose load, the insulin load, than eating super high fat, unless there's like an absolute medical condition like epilepsy or something like that. They might need to push those up a little bit more because they are very, very sensitive to things like gluconeogenesis or like any small bump that can kind of cause a seizure. So like for them, they need to be really tightly regulated in that range. But for otherwise healthy individuals, kind of can kind of play around with it on their own.
Okay. So you just brought up a point. What about autism? Like if a child had autism and a mom was like, oh, I can't change their diet, it's just too hard. Would you recommend exogenous ketones, like if they're functional, or what would you say about that?
Yeah. I mean, one, they would have to run it past their doctor to see if their doctor would allow them to do it. I think making better food choices overall is going to be important. I wouldn't say they absolutely needed to go on a ketogenic diet, but maybe just start cooking with coconut oil. Incorporate in MCT, like maybe bake with some MCT powder inside of a little treat that you want to make them, like lower the sugar load. Like we talked about it in the ketogenic Bible, like especially with autism, there seems to be this correlation between high amounts of sugar and worsened outcomes. So like minimizing the glucose load, minimizing sugar to the best of your ability, and like cooking with alternatives, using things like erythritol or allulose or some of these less metabolic sugar alternatives would be a lot better for them.
Okay. And so would the exogenous ketones help them?
It could. There's been no studies directly with autism, but theoretically, if you're providing a different source of fuel for the brain, it theoretically should. There's some stuff with a ketogenic diet showing pretty significant improvements in the autism rating scale. So
yeah, I remember reading about that. And then I also remember you said something about the correlation between epilepsy and autism.
There is a correlation between a lot of children who have autism tend to also have epileptic seizures, and then vice versa. There's a higher proportion of people with epilepsy that also are on the spectrum.
Interesting. Wow, there's so many mysteries out there. And then, oh wait, she just was emailing me back to talk to me. Should they be used in some way? Okay, so those are the questions I think I have. Okay, so the other things I would like to know are, what are some of your favorite foods?
Ooh.
Besides sushi.
Besides sushi. Honestly, I love Cobb salads. I'm a big Cobb salad fan. It's just one of the things that I like, because I used to eat, before I was keto, I used to eat a lot of food. Like I was one of those kids growing up when I was playing baseball. Like my metabolism was so fast, I could eat anything. So one of the things I focus on now is eating high volume keto foods. And one of the ways I increase my volume of my meals is with things like a Cobb salad is a lot of volume for the amount of calories that you get with it. So Cobb salads, any type of meat. I love steak, of course, but I also like experimenting with things like palmini and spaghetti and meatballs and stuff like that. And of course, I still have a sweet tooth, so I love making a bunch of different low carb desserts.
So okay, so question. I'm on your email list and you posted something about a caramel made with allulose.
Yes.
Caramel
yes.
candy. Is that is it chewy and sticky like a milk dud? Or, because I bought the allulose to try it.
It's once if you set it out, it should turn hard, kind of like a hard candy. And allulose is tricky. It's an interesting sweetener that's starting to emerge. You're going to start seeing it in a lot more products. It's pricey right now because there's not a ton of supply, but it really has no metabolic impact. Tastes almost virtually like sugar because it's technically a sugar, but basically just gets excreted out, and you don't store it, and it has no metabolic impact on your body.
Okay, cool. Because I'm going to try that. One of my favorite candies is C's Candy Dark Chocolate Caramel. So I got the Lily's Dark Chocolate chips, and I want to make those caramels. And anyway, so I ordered the caramel stevia that you had on your blog and all that. Oh, another question. I ordered some really cute tank tops from your website. How about some hats, Ryan? Come on.
I know. I got to tell the team to put them on there.
Yeah, I would love some cool hats, to wear when I do all my stuff that, like the tank tops.
For sure. We'll get them up there.
Awesome. So what is next for you? What are you guys working on that, is your next big thing?
That's a great question. We have a lot going on. With Ketogenic.com, we've just kind of revamped our keto club, which has been really fun. We're doing a lot of kind of like keto masterclass things in there. If you ever seen the master classes, we're doing those, but for keto. So we have one on all women's hormones, one on protein, where it's a full series of videos that's just short, condensed, packed with information. So that's been super fun. And then we're also getting ready to launch in other languages. We're planning on getting ready to launch, especially Keto Mastery and some of the Keto Club stuff, in Spanish. So that's kind of our next hoorah, which will be in the next, I'd say, 30 to 60 days.
Oh, that's fantastic. Good for you. That is awesome. You. Well,
thank you.
I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. I am so inspired by your work. I loved reading your book, and I've had so many people buy it. And a couple podcast episodes ago, after I finished reading it, I highlighted it like crazy. And I literally came on the show and listed, okay, on page number this and on page number that. And I said, this is why I've changed my mind about exogenous ketones. I was so against them. And even for me personally, I've never been this weight. I've never weighed this little by still being strong. But I added those, and that's all I did different. I still drink my glass of wine every night or two, but the weight's coming off. I can't explain it,
Love it. That's incredible.
Yeah, it's good. So I just want to thank you so much for coming on. It's been a pleasure. Oh, wait. So go back. How can people find you? I forgot that. Sorry.
You can find me at Ryan P. Lowery on Instagram, Dr. Ryan Lowery on Facebook. Just started on TikTok. It's Dr. Ryan Lowery there, and our website's ketogenic.com. So a lot of anything that you have as far as keto, we have free articles and recipes and all that fun stuff.
And cute hats.
And yes, we will now.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. I will just keep following you and learning from you as we go.
Thank you so much. It was an honor. Hope you have a great day.
You too. Oh my gosh, that was so awesome. I just loved every minute of that conversation, and I hope that you were inspired to not only follow a ketogenic diet, but also to try out the exogenous ketones. For complete show notes, please head on over to the blog at highenergygirl.com/show for all of Dr. Lowery's links, and so that you can take a look at this amazing book as well. So thank you so much for listening. I hope you were inspired. Go out and make it a great day. This podcast contains the opinion and thoughts of its host and guests. It is intended to provide helpful and informative material on the subjects covered. All statements made on the podcast have not been evaluated by the FDA and are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent disease. If the listener requires professional assistance or advice, please contact your personal medical doctor. Both host and guest specifically disclaim any responsibility for any liability, loss, or risk, personal or otherwise, which is incurred as a consequence directly or indirectly of the use and application of any of the contents of these episodes. Like I said, this is my opinion and I could be wrong.